The footage you're seeing in the background is entirely spoiler-free. I avoided any particular major story events, and this is from the first 15 to 30 minutes of the game. None of this will go past Chapter 1, so in the event that you are interested in trying out this game, feel free to do so, and you can watch or listen to this video without need to worry about spoilers. With that being said, let's talk about Nikke, or Nike. Now, on the day of recording this, it is November 4th. I played this on the 3rd towards the end of the day at my time, so it was probably around the release date for it. But ultimately, I have some thoughts regarding the current state of the game, my opinions of it, and whether or not I'll continue to play it, and also whether or not I would recommend it. First and foremost, I played this game for around 1 to 2 hours. I didn't get too heavily into the story, so this is more of a first impressions, and I did drag another individual, or a couple individuals, to play this game as well to get their opinions. Nikke, I really don't know how to say the name of the game, and ultimately, I'm probably going to alternate between them. But I think it's actually a surprisingly good game. Now, for my first impressions, I wasn't expecting much. I thought it was all going to be based around the jiggle physics of the game, and I'm surprised to say that the anime aesthetic, as in the animations and the certain scenes that are really beautifully animated, work wonderfully. The general gameplay, general style, and character models are pretty nice, really detailed, surprisingly. The English voice acting is actually pretty good. I was expecting something lower quality, and I'm surprised by how nice it was. So if you're playing on JP or EN, honestly pick whichever one you prefer. If you don't want to read, pick EN. If you don't mind it, listen to JP. But in my opinion, both are adequate. The combat system of the game is actually pretty involved. Ultimately, the game boils down to you controlling multiple different units that have different specializations, from snipers which can attack enemies at longer range that you may actually need to use, to assault rifles, shotguns, missile launchers, etc. Unsurprisingly, each of these have their own uses and own disadvantages, and considering you're controlling the entirety of your team, you can generally get them to do what you want. You have much more control over the way combat unfolds, and they do have a quick battle option in the event that you far exceed the power level or the recommended strength for the opponents that you're facing. This means that should you end up over-leveling or overbuilding your units before you enter a specific stage, you have the option of just quick skipping it rather than stopping it individually, saving you on time. Now, if you're an individual like me and thought the game was solely going to be based around the jiggle physics of the characters, you'd be kind of right. Don't get me wrong, the game actually has a pretty nice story, and I was pretty involved, at least in the early sections, and based on the fact that in the first 10 minutes it was able to draw me into the story and into the characters to get me to like a lot of them, I was pretty surprised. So I will say there is that, but I will also say that if you're not a fan of the hypersexualized designs, or at least style and aesthetic of the game, it may not be for you because it is pretty prevalent. Now, it's not shoved in your face to an extent to where you have to ignore or really have to try extremely hard to move past it, but it's present, and to an extent I would say that if you don't like it, it will take you out of the experience. I will also say that if you much more enjoy auto combat games like either Raid Shadow Legends or Blue Archive, and that you can set the game to basically auto do everything for you, then this isn't a game for you. Mind you, I did say before that you can quick battle or skip battle essentially. And that does still reign true, but when you are closely matched with the opponent you're facing off against, the game does require you to actively take control, and that does require you shooting. And don't get me wrong, your team can take care of themselves to a degree, but you do still have to order them to take cover, and you may want to take control of one of them to get out a particular enemy from afar. Again, this isn't exceedingly common, but it is something to consider because of a time investment required. The game is really quick, the story can be skipped, there's a skip button constantly in every scene, so that you don't have to sit through dialogue options that you really don't want to read. There's even an autoplay option. Autoplay is in the dialogue, autoplay is not the game itself. And so when it comes down to my overall first impressions, from the very beginning, I was honestly quite surprised. Now, the downside I would say, however, is that the nature of the game requires you to play this game in portrait mode, not landscape, which is why you're currently seeing background footage that is only shoved to, I believe, one side of the screen or maybe even the middle. As a result of this, if you're an individual like me who likes to bounce around between different gacha games on their phone, you do have to adjust where you're holding your phone, which is a slight issue, and if you play on PC, BlueStacks is going to have to be ran in portrait mode for the sole purpose of running this game, which can be a bit of a bummer depending on how you like to enjoy your experiences in mobile games. I didn't find it to be too much of an issue. However, when the game does switch to its animated scenes, you do need to rotate your phone into landscape mode, so it's kind of a bit of an annoyance, at least in that instance. Overall, though, it left me feeling pretty satisfied. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand why individuals may not like it, I understand why I may be pushed away from it. If you're looking at the game and you're solely seeing the game advertised and marketed and essentially showcasing the jiggle physics of the characters, then I understand why that may take you out the experience. But the fact that the characters themselves actually have some degree of personality, the voice acting is pretty good, and the combat feels really fluid, gives this, in my opinion at least, a solid enough standing where I would recommend it to a lot of individuals. At least give it a shot. If it's not for you, it's not for you, but I'd say it's worth a try. I played Counterside and Art of Gear Fusion, and I found this to be the most interesting and involved of those games. In comparison to games like Arknights and Blue Archive, I'd say it's entirely different, depending on the characters you prefer, depending on the storyline you prefer, and the gameplay style, because each one of these games has a different style. Arknights is tower defense. Blue Archive is something where you're much more watching things happen on screen and occasionally acting skills. This one has the most involved gameplay, and compared to Tower of Fantasy and Genshin Impact, they are on an entirely separate scale. Keep in mind, I would recommend ignoring a lot of the current reviews on the Google Play Store and the iOS App Store. This is because the game's just released. A lot of the individuals who are going to give it higher ratings are just starting out, and depending on how they feel, the game may feel really nice early on, and then it may dip down in quality or in replayability later on. So ignore the reviews and judge an opinion and create an opinion based on your own experiences, or at least those you trust. If you're going to utilize an emulator, do understand that they will occasionally crash. I've had BlueStacks crash as of right now once while playing the game, and I don't know if this is going to be a consistent issue or if it was just due to the game updating. However, I want to mention that to you beforehand in the event that you do have issues with whatever emulator you're using. As of right now, I'm currently attempting to continue getting the game running, and I've had it crash about twice and maybe 3 times as of right now. So the crashing is prevalent, but it can depend on the emulator you're running it. I had no problems on my iPad. I had no problems on my phone. Overall though, I would say I got a solid experience and a worthwhile experience. From the voice acting that surprised me to the interesting story and the fact that a lot of the scenes that I was genuinely interested in were animated really well. It wasn't like a couple still images here and there. No, it was actually moving, and it was really nice to see. So the game has a higher quality bar than I was expecting going in. I know the characters themselves got a couple people invested into them, and as a result, that's probably going to play into the game's strengths in regards to how the character designs are. The animations for the bursts are really nice, and while I haven't had a character who personally appeals to me just yet, I can see the appeal of a lot of these designs. So my overall rating for Nikke, or Nikke, if I could pronounce the name right, would probably be a 7 out of 10. I don't want to give it a 8 or 9 out of 10, or even a 10 out of 10 just yet, because first off, I haven't really found a gacha game that I think is perfect. But I also want to wait until it's much later on to determine how I feel about the game going forward. How the content is looking towards endgame, how involved the combat stays, or if it's just sort of this new game feel where everything feels and seems great and then it dries and dies later on. Either way, that's going to be my thoughts for Nikke. If you are playing the game yourself and have some opinions to leave down below, consider dropping them. Whether that be in the comments section, in the Discord server, or in the community tab of my channel. Both are perfectly fine. Consider subscribing because I do intend to play more variety gacha games and just give my general thoughts going forward alongside other variety games. Hit the notification bell because we all are trying to figure out this new immersive mode for YouTube, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.